the endless plains, how two nations fought for the heart of the American frontier. Long before railroads crossed the continent, before cattle trails carved paths across Texas, and before the United States expanded westward, a different struggle shaped their destiny. It was a struggling for but for survival. Across the vast grasslands stretching from present-day Colorado to Texas, powerful indigenous nations battled for hunting grounds, trade
Tonight,
routes, horses.
we stand as one.
Entire
The Great
generations
Spirit
grew
has
up
heard
knowing
our
nothing
call.
except
This land will
warfare
always
and
be
the
our home.
constant challenge. This is the story of two rival nations, one rising and one resisting, and how the arrival of a new world transformed them forever. The Great Plains were unlike any other place on Earth. Millions of buffalo roamed across an ocean of grass. Rivers cut through endless prairies. Winters brought deadly blizzards. Summers delivered scorching heat. Only the strongest could survive here. For centuries, numerous indigenous nations adapted to these harsh conditions. Some built villages near rivers. Others followed migrating buffalo herds. Life demanded resilience. A successful hunter fed dozens of people. A skilled warrior protected entire communities. A wise leader could keep peace between rival bands for years. Yet peace rarely lasted forever. As populations expanded and resources became more valuable, competition intensified. Hunting territories became contested. Trade routes became battlegrounds. Ancient alliances began to fracture. Far to the north, a growing nation of mounted warriors was undergoing a remarkable transformation. They had once been a modest people living near mountain valleys and forested regions. Then horses entered their world. Everything changed. Within a few generations, their children learned to ride almost before they could walk. Young warriors practiced shooting arrows from horseback at full speed. Hunters discovered they could pursue buffalo across enormous distances. Travel that once required weeks could now be completed in days. Mobility became power. Power became influence. And influence attracted conflict. As these riders expanded southward, they encountered nations that had occupied the plains for generations. The newcomers were ambitious. The established nations were determined to defend their territory. Neither side intended to retreat. The first clashes were small, a stolen horse here, a surprise raid there. But each encounter deepened hostility. Families mourned lost relatives. Warriors sought revenge. Old grievances multiplied into new wars. Soon entire regions became contested ground. The struggle was no longer about a single raid or a single village. It became a battle for the future of the plains themselves. War on the frontier looked very different from the massive armies of Europe. There were no grand uniforms, no massive fortresses, no marching columns stretching across the horizon. Instead, small groups of highly skilled fighters relied on speed, surprise, and intimate knowledge of the land. A successful war party could travel hundreds of miles without detection. They moved through river valleys, crossed open grasslands at night, and disappeared into rugged terrain before their enemies could react. Every warrior carried knowledge passed down through generations. They understood weather patterns, animal behavior, water sources, escape routes. Survival itself was a weapon. One nation became particularly feared for its mastery of mounted warfare. Their riders could launch arrows while galloping at full speed. They could attack from unexpected directions. They could appear suddenly and vanish just as quickly. European observers often struggled to understand how such mobility was possible. Traditional military tactics rarely worked against them. Yet their rivals were far from helpless. Many adapted with remarkable creativity. Some retreated into mountains and canyons where horses offered less advantage. Others developed new alliances. Some embraced new technologies obtained through trade. Every setback forced innovation. Every defeat taught painful lessons. The frontier became a school of survival, and only the most adaptable nations endured. As decades passed, another force began reshaping the continent. European empires pushed deeper into North America. Spanish explorers established settlements. French traders expanded their networks. Later, American settlers moved steadily westward. With them came guns, metal tools, new goods, new diseases, and new opportunities. Some indigenous nations benefited from trade. Others suffered devastating losses. Smallpox swept through communities with terrifying speed. Entire villages disappeared. Leaders who had guided their people for decades suddenly died. Social structures weakened. Ancient traditions faced unprecedented pressure. The impact was impossible to ignore. A nation might win every battle against its rivals and still lose thousands to disease. A powerful warrior society could be weakened by forces it could neither fight nor understand. The balance of power shifted again and again and again. Yet despite these hardships, indigenous nations continued adapting. Many became skilled traders. Others forged diplomatic relationships with colonial powers. Some learned to exploit rivalries between European empires. Survival demanded flexibility. The strongest leaders understood this. One respected chief famously advised his people that strength alone would not preserve their future. Wisdom, he argued, was equally important. Knowing when to fight mattered. Knowing when not to fight mattered even more. For a time, these strategies worked. Several nations expanded their influence across enormous territories. Trade flourished. Horse herds multiplied. Buffalo remained abundant. The plains seemed limitless. But appearances can be deceiving. By the 19th century, change accelerated dramatically. American expansion intensified. Trails became roads. Roads became railroads. Settlements multiplied. Buffalo hunters entered the plains in unprecedented numbers. The consequences were catastrophic. For countless generations, buffalo had been the foundation of life. They provided food, clothing, shelter, tools, fuel. Their disappearance threatened entire cultures. As herds declined, competition for resources increased. Communities faced impossible choices: move farther away, adapt to new economies, or risk starvation. Many resisted. Warriors launched raids against encroaching settlements. Some nations formed alliances against common enemies. Others fought desperately to preserve their traditional way of life. But industrial expansion proved relentless. Railroads continued advancing. Military forts multiplied. New settlers arrived every year. The world that had sustained the Plains nations for centuries was disappearing. One conflict after another erupted across the frontier. Some battles became legendary, others were forgotten. Yet together they told the same story: a struggle to preserve independence, a struggle to defend identity, a struggle to survive. The courage displayed during these years remains extraordinary. Small groups of warriors often confronted forces far larger than themselves. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, endured hunger, and refused to surrender easily. Many became symbols of resistance. Their names entered history. Their stories inspired future generations. Yet even the bravest leaders could not stop every change. Reservations were established. Traditional territories shrank. Children were often separated from their communities. Ancient ways of life faced unprecedented disruption. To many observers, it appeared the old nations had been defeated forever. But history rarely follows such simple paths, because survival takes many forms. A nation does not disappear simply because its circumstances change. Languages endure, traditions endure, families endure, memory endures. Across the 20th century, indigenous communities rebuilt. Cultural practices were revived. Languages were preserved. Historic knowledge was passed to younger generations. Many nations strengthened their governments and reclaimed parts of their heritage. The story did not end with defeat. It continued through resilience. Today, descendants of those frontier warriors still live across the American West. Their communities preserve histories that stretch back centuries. Their traditions remain alive. Their identities remain strong. The battles of the plains are no longer fought with horses and bows, yet the lessons remain. Adaptation matters. Unity matters. Survival matters. The rise and fall of nations often captures the attention of historians, but perhaps the more remarkable story is endurance. Empires rise, empires fall, borders change, governments disappear, yet people endure. The nations that once rode across the endless plains left a legacy far greater than territory. They left stories of courage, stories of sacrifice, stories of determination, and stories of survival against overwhelming odds. Their history reminds us that strength is not measured only by victories on the battlefield. Sometimes true strength is measured by the ability to endure change without losing who you are. And in that sense, the people of the frontier achieved something extraordinary. If you enjoyed this journey into the forgotten history of the American frontier, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to US Wild West Love Story. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next story from the untamed West, where history, courage, and legend ride together across the endless plains. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure.
Fringed coat holds the desert dust. Feathers whisper what I've lost. This fiery sky, a painted goodbye. The last ride of a legend rides by. A legend rides by. These canyons know the lines upon my face. Watched all my kin fade in this burning place. Just this beaded leather and a weary soul. The sunset paints a story taking its toll. He lost everything, but never surrendered. He lost everything, but never surrendered. Dust devils dance on the sea of sun-cracked earth. Count the cost of what this wild freedom's worth. Got the weight of mountains hanging from my neck. Just another lonely rider on a ghost-drawn wreck. Watch the end of an empire burn against the sky. 1,000 years of history in my father's eye. They built their fortress walls to fence the setting sun. But my soul rides on forever now that my last ride is done. Cliffs hold echoes of my past. A golden sun that's built to truly last. They took the sacred ground beneath my feet, but this old soul will never know defeat. My spirit is unbroken, free and complete. Sun paints the canyon walls. My spirit answers when the desert calls. A warrior's legacy lives forever. Stronger than the wind, bound by no tether. A warrior's legacy lives forever. Every gilded dream has turned to dust. From empire to survival, this spirit's my one true rival. Yeah, we'll see this long night through to survival. Ooh, yeah. Saw that old flag getting weathered and frayed. Watch the dust settle on promises made. And this fiery sky still burns in my soul, but they never took the heart that makes me whole. They saw the sunset on our names. They thought his people were gone. They were wrong. Orange dust hangs on the evening air. Feel the weight of all the years I've carried. The last chief of the endless plains. And watch the final sunset burn. These canyons know my my weathered face, they've seen the fire and the rain. He survived when empires fell. His spirit's in the wind's refrain. He survived.